geography section.
I did perfectly on the geography, but that's one of my talents. I don't have a lot of them, but we both knew Hynella, right?
We both knew Hynella, yeah. But I'm a Camden County guy, so I've got a head start on that one.
That's right. I think some people are seeing us, and let's I just want to check one thing. And I think we're good. So Matt Rooney of Save Jersey, thank you for joining me. I know we were both doing for the last hour. So welcome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch some of that with Wally Edge. We caught like the last 10, 15 minutes together.
Yes.
Interesting evening. So I appreciate you having me to talk about it.
No, so was there a winner?
Is there ever really a winner in these things, right? I mean, I've always thought, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the way to lose a debate is to commit a misstep, some kind of error, to have that moment where people remember it in a negative way. Maybe your adversary can turn it into a campaign ad so that people can't forget it even if they want to. And it's something that's just an albatross hanging around you for the rest of the election. I don't think either man did that tonight. I think both men went in there with a very specific mission. I think Chitterelli was trying not to make any mistakes. I also think he was trying to prove he was the adult in the room. I think Hirsch also, in a very different way, needed to prove he was the adult in the room because, let's face it, he's a millennial that lives at home. So he needed to convince people, and I hate this word because it's overused, he needed to show people that he had the gravitas to be a governor, not just a guy that puts up some cute memes on Facebook. He also needed to convince the MAGA folks that are following him around that he really does have their best interests at heart. So I think they both gave their base something. And I think that they both validated what I think ELEC's process, however imperfect, kind of assumes that these are probably the two most likely Republican nominees.
So before we talk about the debate, let's go through one other thing, which is the absence of Phil Rizzo and the absence of Brian Levine. Yeah. Does there not being in a debate, and remember, this is still a radio debate. It's not network television. There'll be some newspaper coverage. I'm not sure how much that's going to matter. Will this debate really make that much of a difference on undecided primary voters?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I wish we had a better sense of who was logging in. I can tell you that probably like you, I was texting some people during the debate, hey, are you watching? Hey, are you watching? And I was surprised how many rank and file Republicans were not logging in. And these are not all the committee people who end up getting written about at the New Jersey Globe or SaveJersey.com. These are just some 404 Republicans. They vote all the time. They're people that I know are going to vote on the 8th of June, and they just weren't logged in. So I think if you're an undecided Republican tuning in this debate tonight, again, it depends what you were going for. If you're someone whose defining issue is that 2020 was robbed from the president, I think you're impressed with Hirsch Singh. He was a little bit shaky at times, despite how many races he's run, but he was well prepped, and he repeated the MAGA talking points beautifully. Jack, I thought, did a very good job of appearing affably. I know that I watched and listened to that debate tonight with my wife, and she's somebody who's a genuine swing voter. She makes her own decision every election, and she was impressed with Jack. She liked the way he sounded. She liked how reasoned and measured he was. So, I think that some of this is trying to persuade the persuadable voters out there. Some of this is base reassurance. It's kind of like when you watch TV, the car commercials are for the people that already own the car. I think that if you're already a Jack guy, you're probably more of a Jack guy. If you're a MAGA person, you're for Hirsch. The real question comes down to Hirsch made a point tonight about how, And I don't know if this exactly mathematically lines up, that if everybody that votes for Donald Trump comes out in the primary, he wins. Well, I mean, that's kind of an obvious statement in the sense that general elections get a lot more people out than primaries. But do those MAGA people show up for him? Are they still ticked off, and do they take it out on a Republican primary?
And do they know him? I think that's part of it too. Is he had the 500,000 to qualify for the debate? We won't know how much more money he's got till I think just a little bit before the primary. I haven't. I mean, you know this better than I do. Is he up on TV? Is he in the mailboxes? Is he out there enough to win votes?
He's in the mailboxes. He's not in the mailbox as much as Jack, but he's there. I think I've gotten one or two Sing mail pieces. And, if I have a criticism about the mail generally this cycle, it's the same criticism I had of tonight, which I think that what both men are missing is that what your average Republican swing voter like myself is looking for. Look, I voted for Donald Trump twice. There's things about his personality I wasn't a fan of. There's things about his policy that I loved. But Phil Murphy is the Republican Party's enemy number one right now. He's also the enemy number one of the New Jersey taxpayer. He's the enemy number one of anybody that has a family member at a nursing home. Or has a small business. So, I wanted to hear more about Phil Murphy, and I want to vote for the guy that I think is going to be the best prosecutor of Phil Murphy. Forgive me. I know this is going to tick some of my own readers off at Save Jersey. At this point, 2020, I don't give a damn. I want to hear who's going to take it to Phil in November. And, I heard a little bit of that from both guys. Jack actually pleasantly surprised me. He was dropping some elbows tonight, which you need to do to win in New Jersey. But that's really what someone like me wants to see.
So did you get the impression that there was more talk about Donald Trump tonight than Phil Murphy?
Yes. And look, I mean, we've watched enough of these things, and I don't mean to throw any shade at Eric Scott, because I have all the respect in the world for NJ 1015. Mm-hmm. It's a great station, and they got some great programming, even though sometimes I know they get a lot of flack. But let's face it. I mean, that's what gets attention. What Jack thinks about Donald Trump, what Hirsch says about Donald Trump, who's with him, who's against him. I mean, the Star Ledger has a writer who seems like he's almost exclusively devoted sometimes to just writing about Republicans' opinions on Donald John Trump. So, I mean, yeah, I think that it's a disservice that we focus so much on a guy who is now out of office. Certainly, I get that some of Trump's legacy is relevant, but as much as Phil Murphy would like it, Donald Trump's not on the ballot this November. A guy's on the ballot who has to live or die, politically speaking, by his record on COVID, by his economic policy, by the fact that a third of the businesses that were here at the beginning of 2020 aren't here anymore. We didn't even really get into that. We kind of just touched the surface of his small business regulations. And that's a real shame. And I think that that's a big problem, because I don't hear so much about Donald Trump from my readers. I hear a lot about small businesses, because not everybody has a positive opinion of Donald Trump or a negative opinion of Donald Trump, but everybody knows a business in their town that they used to frequent that isn't there anymore, or knows someone that owned one. It's a sleeper issue. Gotta drill down more on that.
And some of these process issues that Hirsch Singh talked about, rigged conventions, and even tomorrow night's debate, and whether who was responsible for it not going on, will that influence undecided Republican primary voters?
I think that there's a small sliver who they're annoyed at what they believe is the Republican Party and just the country's rigged political process. So probably appeals to them, but I don't think he brings anybody else new in with that. Look, we all know that, for example, voter fraud is a real thing. It's happened in New Jersey. But ultimately, if Republicans lose in 2021 New Jersey, look, I mean, I'm sure that there'll be some shenanigans with vote by mail. There are almost every year, but it's probably going to be because Republicans didn't, as I said, prosecute Phil Murphy. They didn't take his record, take it to the people, and give people an alternative vision. So I think that, for example, if you want to use somebody like my wife again, David, I mean, her eyes are glazing over when these two are arguing about conventions and whether the convention process was fair. Tell me when I'm going to get my unemployment check. Tell me when my kid's going to be able to take off their mask at school, even though they're at low risk for the virus and it's 97 degrees outside.
Right, and say they both agreed on that. They both agreed on masks. They both agreed on children in school wearing masks. There were a couple issues where they disagreed. One of them was abortion.
Yeah.
Jack Ciattarelli came out, as he has before. He's pro-life with exceptions for rape and incest. Hirsch Singh said no exceptions whatsoever. That there are people in the Republican primary that's going to move one way or the other, aren't there?
Yeah, I think that no matter what the issue is, right, there's always going to be a voter that's going to gravitate towards the stronger pole. Reagan called it the bold color instead of the pale pastel. So if abortion is your number one issue or one of your top issues, maybe you like what Hirsch had to say. Whereas Jack, and I think this kind of goes to the larger contrast between them, he's the more traditional conservative Republican. That was George W. Bush's position. Try to reduce abortions, outlaw many abortions that are currently legal, especially in some of these states, now like we have, New York moving towards late-term abortion, but allow certain exceptions. So, in some ways you kind of have this larger discussion playing out in the New Jersey primary of this tug of war in the Republican Party. Are we going to kind of revert after Trump to what we were before he got here, or are we going in some kind of new direction? But your point about the agreement is really interesting because, if you follow this as closely as a guy like you do or I do, what really separates Jack and Hirsch on the issues, other than Donald Trump, isn't that much. There isn't that much ideological disagreement. The difference between these guys is really a biographical one. Jack, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, he's held a bunch of elected offices. He's a successful businessman. He's got a wife. He's got kids. That's shapes who he is and probably says something about what kind of governor he was. Hirsch is a young guy. He's a millennial like me. Lives with his parents. Hasn't won any races. I'm not saying that to disparage him, but he's much more of the Ocasio-Cortez kind of model of candidate. The reason you're going for me is because I'm untainted from being around these people like Jack. I think different Republicans are going to respond to that contrast differently. And, again, I'm not criticizing Eric Scott. I've only done one debate, and it was certainly difficult. I know you've done a few. It'd almost be kind of nice if they had worked in some extra biographical questions, because that's where the real distance between these guys is.
So, and I agree with you. And Jack Ciattarelli made a number of comparisons on the biography. And you said Hirsch is a millennial like you, but you are an attorney. You're in a law practice. You have a wife and a child. And although I don't want to pry, but I assume a mortgage and I assume you pay property taxes and
tons of property taxes.
And they're characterizing Hirsch as a guy, your age, who hasn't really had that kind of experience, hasn't had those kind of responsibilities. Could you see Hirsch Singh as governor of New Jersey?
It's hard to imagine, and it's hard to imagine for this reason, because I think that as I evaluate each candidate, the fact that Hirsch is not going to be able to relate to your average unaffiliated voter in a place like Mount Laurel or one of the many Washington townships tonight that they quizzed them on in the geography section, the fact that he's not going to be able to relate to him on some of these things, I think it's a problem. Now, you may say to me, Matt, well, why is it not a problem for an Ocasio-Cortez, but it is for a Hirsch? Some of that's the different jurisdictions in which they're running. Some of it's because life isn't fair, and Republicans are accused of being uncold, unfeeling, and unable to be empathetic. So I think if you're going to be a MAGA guy in New Jersey, where MAGA is not that popular in the general election, but you've run a small business, you've got a family, you can do what Chris Christie did. For example, when Christie talked about abortion, back to that issue for a second, he didn't just say, I'm pro-life. He said, I'm pro-life because the moment that I went with my wife and we saw our baby for the first time, we went in for that sonogram, I was a changed man. He knew how to empathize. And that kind of life experience is something that you can't BS. So I was impressed with Hirsch tonight. He did his homework. His presentation was decent. But I think that that's a deficit he's going to run up against. And I think it's going to be one that's really easy for the Murphy people to exploit. Let's face it. I'm a conservative Republican. There are a few people in this state that can go up against me for Murphy loathing credentials. But a lot of people kind of find him as this likable, non-threatening nerd. So in order to beat that, it's not just going to be enough to be the most conservative. You also have to be somebody that can empathize with New Jerseyans and get them to listen to you. That's his challenge.
And, Singh, I mean, Chitterelli went after him several times on this, but part of it just seems to be that he was saying Singh lacks an ideology. I saw Singh very well rehearsed tonight. His recitation of facts far more impressive than I've heard him in his other campaigns. But
Totally.
Quite frankly, I don't know if there was a lot of depth there with him. And I look at Chitterelli, whether you like these people or not, Jack Chitterelli, there's depth, there's experience, there's Phil Rizzo, different kind of experience, but there's a story there. Brian Levine, lot of local government experience. I can't help but think that Singh just doesn't have that. And I'm trying to be objective on this. I really am, but I just don't. I didn't see. He did much better than I thought he would, but I didn't see much more than a guy who was able to memorize facts. Am I wrong? I mean,
no, and that's how he came across. He came across as a smart A student that was able to cram for the big exam, and he did well. Now, when you're sitting in the front office as governor and you're dealing with a crisis, or when you're negotiating with Steve Sweeney, or when you're dealing with Andrew Cuomo over some kind of interstate dispute, when you're negotiating with Washington D.C. for dollars, I mean, is it that simple? Of course not. Jack has a greater command of the issues. I'm not even sure that Singh would disagree with that. I think what Singh and types of candidates like Singh would tell you is that their naivete is almost kind of their strength. That again, I'm removed from this stuff. I'm fresh. You can hear that I have a good mind. You can see that I have a good mind, but ultimately it's less important what I know. It's what I represent. I represent you. I'm a populist. I support Donald Trump. I support draining the swamp, et cetera, and so on. So, the interesting thing about the Republican Party is I think the Republican Party is very much split right now between these two camps. And Hirsch, he did what he needed to do tonight. He dropped the Liz Cheney card, which, is her name is dirt right now in the Republican Party. But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I say that as somebody who was not a fan of Liz Cheney. I think she's been an awful leader of the Republican conference, and I'm glad they replaced her. But good golly, it's tough. I mean, really, ultimately, if you're a Republican, I'm looking at this tonight, I'm saying who is going to have the best chance of uniting this coalition to beat Phil Murphy? I'm not sure we know what the answer to that is. I think it being as objective as possible. If I had to pick somebody in here tonight to do my taxes, I'd probably ask Jack. Who's going to get Trump voters? And I'm not even going to say Christine Todd Whitman voters because they haven't voted for us a long time, but who's going to get those more like moderate or traditional conservative Republican voters into the voting booth? I don't know. I think these guys need to spend a lot more time talking about Phil.
Yeah. So one of the other things that surprised me was Hirsch Singh played the Indian American racism card.
Oh, yeah.
And I was watching on the screen. You and I were on the same time, and I grimaced. I think I saw you grimace too. What was that about? What was he?
I have no idea. I'm all about throwing sharp elbows, not just because I'm a lawyer, but because I love New Jersey politics, and I think there's nothing wrong with throwing a fair shot at somebody. But I have no idea what the heck he was talking about. And I think it was, if you want to find a mistake that Singh made tonight, that was it, because we all know that Republicans, myself included, have had it up to here with cancel culture and accusing everyone who doesn't fit into a certain narrative of being a racist. So I do think that there's probably some conservative voters out there tonight who were probably listening to Hirsch Singh and maybe nodding at a lot of what he was saying. But as soon as he said that, they made the same face that you saw me make. And who knows? We're not in the room with those folks. We don't have Frank Luntz with his dials telling us allegedly what the heck it is they're thinking. But I bet you he may have prevented himself from closing the deal with a few folks for that reason. Because if they pick 5 reasons right now, 5 issues that motivate Republicans, one of them is what's happening to our culture and the inability to have a conversation. That's what the left and the hardcore leftists like Phil Murphy have done. They've made it so that if you disagree, you're anti-science, you're a racist. To use Murphy's favorite word, you're a knucklehead. We want to get away from that. If anything, I think Jack then missed a little bit of an opportunity because he should have jumped all over it and made the point that I just made.
So I want to jump ahead, whether it's 4 years, 8 years, just going into the future, because we all learn from our past, and this is back to a process issue. So there are 4 candidates on the ballot. 2 were in a debate, 2 were not in a debate. Everybody should be looking at how this works going forward. Should these rules change? Should somebody who's on the ballot be on the debate? Should they change it? Should Phil Rizzo have been in this? Should Brian Levine have been this? And we both watched, the cavalcade of, cast of thousands in presidential debates where nobody gets any time to say anything. But is this the right way? Is this process good?
I mean, nobody wants a clown car. Those Republican debates where there was, 30 guys getting out of a VW bug, and it was impossible to get any sense of who believed what and who had the stuff to be a president. I'm also a fan of rules. I mean, look, and this is something I would, say to the Rizzo folks, even though some don't want to hear it. You may be the greatest guy in the world. You may be the greatest candidate in the world, but if you can't follow and meet certain paperwork requirements, how the heck are you going to run the state of New Jersey? With all that being said, let's compare Rizzo to Singh. Rizzo actually raised more money from significantly more people than Hirsch Singh, according to their ELEC findings. So filings, excuse me. So, that's only one indicator of someone's support, but Jack tonight repeatedly brought up your ability to fundraise. I know that sounds swampy to some people, but let's face it, you're in 2 of the most expensive media markets in the country when you're running in New Jersey. You got to be able to put together a campaign that wins. And, that old expression, money talks, BS walks. So, I think there is something to be said for the fact that maybe we need to revisit those rules after this campaign, because I think that Rizzo did demonstrate, if nothing else, that he had the ability to raise some cash. And to your point earlier, regardless of how you feel about the guy, and I certainly have some issues with some of his opinions, like his theological pronouncements on Catholicism, but he's a substantial guy. I mean, he built a church. He's done a lot in his life with one arm. I mean, he has a family. He had a following in New Jersey politics before this race. Maybe that's somebody that we should want to hear to. Maybe it should be a little bit harder at the same token for somebody to just come and dump a bunch of family money in the race at the last minute and be able to buy themselves a ticket to a debate. Brian Levine, one of the sweetest guys you'll ever meet in New Jersey Republican politics, and he's got some wickedly smart perspective on some of our fiscal issues that are plaguing us perennially in New Jersey. But, I do think that there does come a point where if you're not going to raise any money when you have virtually no institutional support, you come back to that, 2016 problem. We can't have 30 people on the stage.
And the last thing is, and I'm going to be joined by Saily Avelenda afterwards, and we're going to get the Democratic response to this debate. But you heard both candidates say they would support each other. So you heard them take that unity pledge, which they all do. But are the Singh voters, the Trump Singh voters, will they support Chitterelli against Murphy?
Well, you nailed it as per usual. And when we were listening to that question being asked, I actually thought the better question would have been, Mr. Singh, Mr. Chitterelli, do you not only pledge to vote for this other guy if he wins, but can you and how will you get your voters to support them? It's not a question that rolls off the tongue as easily, but that's really what's critical. And that's kind of the existential question for Republicans going forward for this election in 2022. We got House races up. And then also, again, in 2024, if Trump's not on the ballot, are Trump voters going to come out for a candidate who doesn't have the surname Trump? So, I mean, look, it's, as a Republican activist, whatever the heck you want to call me, I mean, there's questions that I would love to have answered. That's one of them. I'd also like to hear a lot more about what they're going to do with the state party. We all know Christie used the NJGOP as an expense account when he was governor, or what are you going to do differently? Are you going to repeat those same mistakes? But whatever. This wasn't our debate, and I do think the good news is we learned a little bit more about both guys. If you really went into this thing completely stumped, maybe you eliminated somebody tonight, or maybe you've learned something that'll make you dig a little bit deeper. And I guess that's the ultimate goal of these exchanges.
It is. Matt Rooney, first of all, I love your website. You know that, and it is always fun to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. It's a mutual admiration society. You know that.
This is the shortest conversation, a half hour, you and I have ever had.
That's exactly right. Usually it ends about an hour from now, and somebody's spouse is yelling at them to be quiet or turn down the volume. So,
but thank you for joining me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your perspective. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, my friend. See you soon.
So long. You too. Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I see you still have Mikey Sherrill there, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I am.
You can hear me okay, right?
I hear you fine. And
awesome.
for those that have been on for the last half hour, this is the time for a Democratic response to a Republican debate. And Saily Avelenda is the executive director of the Democratic State Committee. So thank you for coming on. And
anytime, David, for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So from your perspective, if you could try to be objective for a moment, was there a winner of tonight's debate?
Yeah. I mean, Phil Murphy, to me, was the winner of the debate. Look, if I'm trying to be objective, I heard no substance, and I think my counterpart actually said those words, but he was right. I didn't hear anything that moves the state forward. What I heard was a lot of moving us back to episode 1 of WandaVision world, where there's these draconian policies that for very good reason have evolved, right? Because our society has evolved. Because our understanding of human nature and humanity has evolved. So I was just very flummoxed by why we would want to rush right back to the things that we have actually shed over time, and why aren't we looking forward? And neither one of these candidates gave me anything to look forward to.
So if your goal, and it is to see Phil Murphy reelected to a second term, are you rooting for Hirsch Singh, or do you think Hirsch Singh is an easier candidate to beat in the general election?
I mean, I think they both position themselves in the very right flank of the party today, and that's where they both are. So they're interchangeable in that regard. There's not a whole lot of space between them. They've identified a base of voters that they are targeting, which is a very right extremist, Donald Trump style voter, and they're there today. I mean, they were both there firmly and squarely today. They're not going to be able to move from that either. That's the interesting part to me, is to see that they are putting all their chips on this portion of the Republican Party that didn't deliver New Jersey for Trump, right? So if the math works, and those are the voters they're going to get, well, Donald Trump lost New Jersey. Not by a little bit either. So I'm really just astounded by what I saw today.
But you don't think this is the way it usually is, or in a Republican primary, the candidates move a little bit right, and then they move a little bit more to the center for the general.
A little bit is the operative term,
yeah. And
I think, look, there's always that, right? There's always your primary voters are not the same as your general election voters. That's politics 101. But I think, to me, what I saw wasn't a little bit of a shift. It was an embracing an extremist wing of the party. It was a race to the right. It was who can be more Donald Trump than Donald Trump himself, and trying to do it, right? Not accidentally falling into the space. They are embracing that. They are choosing that as a way, a path to victory. And it tells me that there's not going to be a moderate to go against Phil Murphy in the general election. Regardless, it doesn't matter which one of these two individuals wins. There is no moderate in this election.
Was Chitterelli successful in painting Singh as somebody who's not ready to be governor?
I don't think either one of these people are ready to be governor. Again, like I didn't get anything from them that told me that they have a plan, that they are taking into account where we are today, not where we were in 1952, that they are going to bring us from this extremely difficult 2 year, year and a half period that we just, are survived, right? And they're going to move us forward. All I heard was a lot of knocking on the person who's sitting there, which I guess, it definitely is part of what their job was tonight. But it did not leave me with any hope that they were going to do anything constructive to make my life better come November 3rd, right? Or, January. That was not part of what I saw. So to me, neither one of them is ready to lead because they don't understand that leading is not what I saw tonight.
But, and this was a big part of it, though, is Chitterelli saying, Hirsch Singh, he doesn't pay property taxes. He hasn't had real world experience. He got, his father funded his last campaigns. He's funding this one. I don't know where the money came from, because when I looked at his financial disclosure as a Senate candidate last year, he didn't have this kind of money to self-fund a race. It did from the perspective of New Jersey. Do you feel that if you didn't have Phil Murphy, and I know you don't want to see a world without Phil Murphy, I get it. But do you feel that either one of them showed that as an alternative, they'd be a better fit for the state?
No, because that alternative means all of my rights are stripped back. That alternative means returning to a time when, one of them did say something about like there should be no minimum wage. That alternative means no healthcare for women. It means more guns on the streets. It means things that I do not want to live with. So no. That is not a better alternative. Neither one of them presented me with an option for a better alternative from the other. They're both to me equally very scary as a woman, as a Latina, as somebody who just does not. I am part of the target universe, right? That would lose so many of those rights that they are just so cavalier about stripping and so actually eager and zealous to do so.
So Singh said tonight that his very first day as governor, he would issue an executive order to return New Jersey to the 1966 right to carry. It seems to me that was the, and it doesn't matter which side you're on, at least, as I try to be objective, and you don't have to be, and I understand your job, but it sounds to me like that was a soundbite that you would see in TV commercials for Governor Murphy if Hirsch Singh won the nomination.
First, I just want to point out that he was very eager to use executive order power from day one.
I noticed that too, yes.
Right? Like, I think the question before then was about executive orders. So or implied that use of executive orders, whatever. Just putting that little piece aside.
Yeah.
He's actually going against New Jersey values on this and New Jersey's positions on gun control. I mean, New Jersey is not the South, right? And that is proven time and time again in all of the polling. I mean, there was a Fairleigh Dickinson University poll in late 2019, and the only question, if I'm not mistaken, that did not have support was, would you support rolling back the existing protections in New Jersey? Every other measure, including banning assault rifles and high capacity mags, all of that has broad support in the state of New Jersey. We do not, our citizens do not, our people do not want this. So for him to stand there and say, I want to roll us back to 1966, which is episode 2 of WandaVision. I really think that, again, he's playing to a very particular base, and that is not New Jersey.
And they both established a pro-life position. They both have before. It was no surprise, but
yes, they're very worried about uteruses, but they are not worried about babies once they're born. But yes, you can continue with your question.
So you as you usually do, sometimes you stun me. So I have to freeze for a second. But so Chitterelli said pro-life with exceptions in the case of rape or incest. Hirsch Singh said no exceptions whatsoever. in a general election in New Jersey, does the differential between the two of them on that issue matter to swing voters?
Do you want to know what number I looked at when I heard that? I heard that 87% of New Jersey believes that a woman's right to make decisions exists between herself and her doctor, and that's it. That is a very recent poll from, I can't remember who did it, but it was about 2 weeks ago that came out. That's the number I look at, because that tells me where New Jersey is at, not where the right fringe of the Republican Party is at. That's what the voters are. Those are the people going to the polls. And so they're going to look at that, and 72%, if I'm not mistaken, support actually codifying those rights. So we are talking about two individuals who, one, are not impacted directly by any of these rules. So it's really, really great of them to just stand there and make these, prognostications. And two, aren't actually following the mandate of New Jersey, right? 87% of the people in New Jersey believe in a woman's right to choose. But yet they insist on, again, rolling us back to, pre-Roe v. Wade.
So one of the other things that, and I'm thinking in terms of what was said tonight is, are New Jersey Democrats, Phil Murphy, Democratic State Committee, Coordinated Committee, what happened tonight that you will use as part of a campaign to keep the governorship in Democratic hands, keep the legislature in Democratic hands, win down party offices? One of the things I heard Singh all in for Donald Trump still, and I heard Ciarelli saying I supported Donald Trump's policies, but didn't say he supported Donald Trump. So my question is that a difference as it relates to swing voters that will make a difference in a general election?
So first thing, I don't know which one of these two individuals is actually going to cross that line on June 8th. I do think that it's telling to me that Ciarelli feels the need to go that far right. It tells me that he is feeling some pressure from Singh, and that's an interesting dynamic, right? Which does change a little bit of what the assumptions were, earlier in this race. But I think most people, and Democrats specifically, have lived through a Trump presidency, right? And the idea that you support Trump policies but maybe don't go as far as saying Trump doesn't mean anything, right? Because all of that means is that you want to send me back to that time, which we just fought our way out of. So from our perspective, I don't think saying, that one little sliver that he carved out for himself of light in there is going to really make a difference when he's been at the Stop the Steal rallies. Ciarelli's been, when, he literally invokes the imagery and all of the policies of a Trump era and just neglects to say the thing. I mean, I will say he does mention Christie, which is his, what was the phrase he used, Ciarelli used, standard bearer?
He did, yes.
So it's, not, again, that's not a huge difference. You are invoking a guy who, all of 10 people or 10%, whatever number you'd like, would like to see in higher office again in New Jersey. He's not popular, and the people they're attaching themselves to are not popular in New Jersey, which is fascinating when they're dying to be attached to them right now. They're like kids swarming them, like at the soccer games when the kids all swarm the ball. That's what they're doing right now. They're just going around like, I want it first. I want more of it. And the rest of us are thinking, but why? Because these people are not popular and these policies are not popular in New Jersey.
So I'm also looking at what is the path to beat Phil Murphy if the governor is not to win a second term, and I talk about this, some people say too much, but I think it's important, and that is that as democratic as New Jersey is, the state has not reelected a Democratic governor in 44 years, and there hasn't been a popular right side up in the polls Democratic governor since 1965. So it's been a long time. So as I look at what is a path to denying the governor a second term, one of the points, and they both agreed on in the debate, is holding Governor Murphy accountable for nursing home deaths. It's a strong soundbite. It's a legitimate issue. How will the governor defend himself on that in general election?
Look, first thing is you have to feel for the people that lost family members in these nursing homes. I mean, we can debate policy and we can debate anything, but the reality is lives were lost everywhere, right? But what Jack Ciattarelli and what Hirsching were saying are absolute lies. And so the first thing I think that we need to be very clear about is is what is true and what is not true. And it is absolutely not true that Governor Murphy, ordered COVID positive patients back into nursing homes. That is a lie. And once you move on from there, then you realize that the governor was dealing with a situation that was so fluid that, we are now 14 months past. It's very easy to sit here and say, we could have done better. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of revision about policies that need to change, right? In order to make, if we're ever in the same place, to not make the same mistakes. But where we were starting from in February included a lot of really bad policies under the Christie administration regarding nursing homes that were in place, coupled with a pandemic, coupled with a fluid, moving target of information and things that were happening at the time. And they are capitalizing on something and they are trying to emphasize something that is a blatant lie. So to me, that is, excuse me?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't want to cut you off. What did you say?
No, I was saying, if Governor Murphy is going to try and take responsibility for moving the state out of the pandemic, doesn't he also get some of the responsibility for what went wrong during the process?
Look, I'm sure there'll be a lot of, like I said, there'll be a lot of, let's look at what happened. And a lot of that will come, in the legislature, and a lot of it will have to come internally, and we will have to look at it. This was an unprecedented 14 months. And there will be a lot of examining the things that went right, which a lot of things did, and the things that went wrong. And in the end, I hope, and the goal would be to improve upon where we were in February 2020, so that the awful chance that we start, have another one of these doesn't happen again. But their starting point is a blatant lie. And to call it anything else is supporting a lie. So yes, a lot of things will need to be revisited, but not from the premise that they've created.
Were you surprised how little Phil Murphy's name actually came up in a Republican debate to choose his opponent?
No, because again, they're the little kids playing soccer trying to swarm the ball around Donald Trump and Chris Christie. Those were the guys that they want. This is the camp that they want to play with. Those were the people they were chasing. And so it actually wasn't surprising at all when you think about the fact that the voters that they're trying to court are very right. I think that was the surprising part, not the lack of Phil Murphy's mentioning the name. It's the fact that they jumped so far to the right, this race to the right, this extremism that is, again, not really part of the Republican Party, like the rest of it.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot of these debates over the years, and that stuck out to me. That surprised me. 12 years ago, Christie did a debate with Steve Lonigan. All they talked about was John Corzine. When Christie Whitman and Carrie Edwards debated, all they talked about was Jim Florio. And it wasn't televised then, but even Kane and Bateman, it was all about Brendan Byrne. I'm surprised. I've seen, I've been watching gubernatorial campaigns for actually 48 years.
That's the
now.
Trump effect, I think. I mean, David, that's the reality
so?
That's the lingering effect of Donald Trump on the Republican Party nationally and even statewide, is this feeling that they have now coalesced around this leader, right? And they are going to carry his message through and through. And that's the part that to me was surprising, considering how poorly he did in 2020 and how poorly he polls in our state. So this rush to the right is counterproductive to me, because in the end, they're going to have to admit that there's an entire body of voters that will not respond to that message. And the reason I know that is because they rejected Donald Trump in 2020, right? They went and did not vote for Donald Trump in 2020.
In New Jersey.
So, in New Jersey, yes. Right? So
yes.
There's that group of voters, Democrats, Republicans, the independents in the middle, whatever you want to count it, like however you want to find, that mesh, that group inside, like in the middle, that group is not the Donald Trump voter, but yet they have completely neglected them in this space and in this debate and rushed all the way to the right. And now they're not going to be able to come back. They're not going to be able to be moderates now and say, you know what I said between January and June wasn't, it's not really me. I was just playing a part. Like, that's not reality. It's all out there. It's all public. It's not like back in the day where you had to rely on newspaper reporting, right? Like actual physical newspaper reporting, and the news wasn't disseminated so quickly. Like, you can literally say, I believe X, and someone will put up a post that says, well, at the debate, you said Y. It's very simple and in real time. And so they're not going to have that luxury of moving to the middle unscathed. It's going to be a lie because they're not in the middle. There are no moderates.
So the other thing that surprised me about watching this debate, and it would go for both parties, is I unless my memory's wrong, I think the only time I heard Joe Biden's name, the president of the United States, was when Jack Ciattarelli said Joe Biden won, and that's unheard of. Christie talked about Obama, and Whitman talked about Clinton, and Tom Kaine invoked Ronald Reagan all the time. It surprised me that Biden's name came up. I think the word Biden maybe once or twice in a whole debate. That was strange. That's an outlier to me.
Yeah, I mean, it just tells me how out of touch they are, because and how much the love of Donald Trump is sycophantic. And also, a lot of it also has to do with money, right? Donald Trump could be a fundraiser for them if they play their cards right. They align themselves the right way. It would be, he would love to come in and like stir things up. You know how he likes to do that. And it's almost like they're trying to court the guy. It's like, Match.com for the Republican right. That was the debate. Whose profile do you swipe? I mean, I'm probably messing up the dating apps at this point because I'm clearly not in that space, but they're just waiting for Donald Trump to swipe the right way. I mean, it's pretty sad, actually.
So did you, as a Democrat, did you watch this debate and you're really feeling more confident in your guys' ability to win than you may have prior to the start of it?
Phil Murphy's ability to win has absolutely nothing to do with the two of them. So my personal view is that he has done the job. He has delivered for New Jersey. He has brought us forward. He has led us through a pandemic. He's going to win no matter who is sitting there. To be honest, my real personal feeling was I grew up in a Republican house and I was really disappointed because this is not the Republican Party that my parents believe in. And so that to me was actually the first thought that came to mind.
And I have to ask this, and I may get in trouble for it, but that's never really.
I just got in trouble for mentioning my parents were Republicans.
Yeah,
so don't worry.
Yeah. but I'm watching her sing, and I'm I'm even contrasting her sing during the first half hour of this analysis with Matt Rooney, who is a professional, and he's got a wife and a child and a mortgage and real life responsibilities. And I'm trying as hard as I can to be objective, but I don't know that I see Singh as somebody who would be governor. And I got to ask you this question. So imagine a world where Singh wins. Imagine where he wins the primary. Imagine, even if you won't like it, that he wins the general election and he moves into Drumpfwagen. Who gets the master bedroom, he or his parents?
David.
Yeah, I mean.
I'm not even going to answer that.
Yeah,
All I'm going to say is nobody should be, checking the drapes to measure the drapes right now. So
I'm trying.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
Saily, I'm trying as hard as I can to get you to say I'd rather run against Singh than Jack Ciattarelli.
I really was looking for like a serious part to that question.
Yeah, you're not taking my bait, and
I'm not taking your bait, David.
It is what it is.
Not going there.
So let me go in a different direction.
And just to back up to say where I thought you were going.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of just trying to figure out which one of these two individuals was more qualified. Here's where I thought you were going. In 2016, I watched a talk show host with barely has command of the English language And I don't mean that, and I mean that like the way he uses it and the words that he tries to express real, important topics, became president of this country. So if I don't even ask me what I was going to do, I'll tell you what I was going to do. I would do exactly what I did in 2016. And that's what happened. So I'd be pretty, that was where I was going with the question, but you can continue.
Okay. So you're confident about Governor Murphy's winning re-election. I'm trying to move you into telling me a winner of this debate. And I'll keep trying one more time. Is there one that you worry about? Do you worry about Jack Ciattarelli more for down ballot races? Do you think that Ciattarelli is stronger in a general election in places like the 2nd district or the 8th district where you're trying to pick up and keep legislative seats?
No, I mean, again, like to me, these guys just showed me that they were on equal footing in terms of, where they are in the state and how much they're going to pull votes. Think about it. You've got an establishment guy who's been doing this, 30 something odd years, right? Who's part of the problem is how we got into where we are before Governor Murphy gets to be governor. And then you've got Singh, who, has no real experience to speak of. Let's just be blunt in this arena, right? To govern, to lead us through a pandemic, to be financially, to deal with the financial issues that we have to deal with, the school funding issues. I mean, these are really big things that affect a whole lot of people. Neither one of them has shown me that they could do this job, because the closer one that got there was Jack Ciattarelli. And the reason that we are where we are is partially because of him. He was in the assembly for a very long time. So I like the way he tries to.
He was only there 6 years.
I mean, in New Jersey.
That's not a long time.
That's
in New Jersey. That's not a long time. That's, 6 years? People that are 6. Yeah. Three
he took
terms.
Some votes in there. What? He didn't show up? He took votes. He took important votes. There's a lot of votes in there that he was responsible for, that he tried, trying to take away healthcare for women, or through Obamacare, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't there a vote?
There was.
Vote? Yeah.
There was, yes.
Yeah. So he took some substantial votes. So he can't pretend like he didn't have some hands in where we were at the beginning, right before Governor Murphy was elected. And then you got a guy who's not gonna hasn't had this experience, doesn't have any legislative experiences. So to me, they've done the same. They've done nothing. They've done nothing. And that's the effect they're going to have on the Republican Party. Nothing right now, because who is going to rally behind any of these folks? They're going to be leaden to the rest of the ballots, to the down ballot. They're going to be leaden.
So you don't think Jack Ciattarelli standing up to Chris Christie, he's being criticized in a primary for being a never Trumper. You don't think that will help him down the road? Because
remember, the people that are, again, we're relying on the fact that they're focusing on this much of the Republican Party. So he might get some pushback from that part of the Republican Party. But the rest of the Republican Party is going to look at the two of them and say, what have you done and what are you going to do? And they're going to see that these people are not going to bring New Jersey forward. They're just going to send us back. And by the way, that's from their own words. They're trying to send us back. They want to go back to this mythical time when things were better in their minds. New Jersey doesn't operate the way other states do in terms of the politics. We have, to your point, had a Republican governor. We have a Democratic legislature. We have mixed and matched before. But neither one of these individuals has brought up any type of a vision to tell me that they're going to be the Republican to unseat one of the more popular Democratic governors in a very long time, who's done a whole lot for the state, who managed to lead the state through a pandemic in times that, there's no handbook, there's no secret drawer the State House is closed, the real one, but in that other desk that he got, right? There's no secret drawer in that other desk with the book of secrets. It explains how to handle a pandemic. He's been out in front. He's been transparent. People have related to that. People understand that, because in the middle of this uncertainty, the one compass for the whole state of New Jersey, Democrat, Republican, or otherwise, was Governor Murphy at his briefings, trying to guide us through. That is a really big and important image. And neither one of these individuals is going to be able to counter that. So to me, neither one of them has the strength to make a dent in that.
All right. So let me ask you, I guess, the last question, because we're about out of time.
You know me before I talk talking to you the whole time.
I know it's like, it's like with Matt Rooney. You and I can go, 2 hours easy, and I get that. But from where you were sitting, when Governor Murphy took office, you were just beginning to become an activist, and you watched the Democratic Party during the first year of the governor's term, certainly, less so as it's gone on, but the Democratic Party was splintered. Now you're watching a debate tonight where you've got two Republicans fighting for who's best fit for conservative votes. Are you comfortable where Governor Murphy is in terms of having all the Democrats united behind him?
Am I comfortable that?
I mean,
Governor Murphy has
comfortable. Let me rephrase it, because comfortable is probably the wrong word. Or do you feel that this very Big Tent Democratic Party that fought a lot at the beginning is the party completely and totally united behind Phil Murphy going into the reelection?
Phil Murphy has done what very few people, what a lot of people want to do, but a few leaders can do. And that is, again, he has not only managed to put through his agenda, he led us through a pandemic. He doesn't have a primary challenger. He has done exactly what he set out to do. As he always says, I am exactly who you thought I would be. I've done everything I told you I would do. So why wouldn't I be comfortable that everyone is united behind him?
Okay.
Because we are all at the point where we know that there is no room here, right? There is no room to forgive. We know what happens when there is a little give. You end up with a talk show host president. So right now, we know exactly what we have. We have a successful governor, high ratings, done exactly what he told us he was going to do, protects women's rights, make sure that we have some gun control, so we can protect the people inside the borders of New Jersey, at least to the extent we're able, despite the federal loopholes. This is our governor, and this is what he's done. He said he was going to do it. He's going to do more. I can't tell you. I mean, I can't tell you how thrilling it is to know that somebody made a list and he kind of went down and ticked it, and he did it, and he's going to do more.
Okay. Saily, Avelenda, thank you. It's always great to talk to you.
All right.
And I appreciate you. And let's do this again after the general election debate. If
me, I'm always up, and I like the ones where
absolutely.
I like the ones where I get to yell at other people, except not you.
I'm just happy when you're not yelling at me.
I'm not yelling at you, David.
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Take care.